do read all the comments and suggestions that we get from you, and we take them into consideration.
We do. That if you're not bouncing off of your audience, then you have to do that to see what we're doing good, what we're doing bad, and what we can improve on.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
If it weren't for you guys, we'd just be sitting here talking to ourselves, and that's not a good thing. No.
We're just playing with ourselves,
Yeah.
Yep. So today we are going to be, what are we going to be talking about? Because you are the expert in this, and I'm going to be guiding your knowledge through, the subjects we're going to be talking about today.
Today, we're going to do a 6 degrees of separation to Johnny Cash.
Johnny Cash, the Man in Black.
Yes, sir. And also, I'm talking a little bit, it was suggested to me, I actually learned something the other day from a very special friend of mine who suggested we do something about the $1 Million Quartet that I did not know was actually made into a Broadway play and everything.
Wow.
But he lost them all.
And how did he lose them?
Well, of course, the whole story with Elvis, Tom Parker stole him away. And with Johnny, he got really bad into substance abuse and everything. And he basically left music until his wife, June Carter, brought him back into the fold, and they started their own situation, And then, of course, we all know the story of Jerry Lee Lewis and his teenage bride, which caused him to
cousin.
Yes, teenage cousin bride. They had him fall out of graces with the public. And then Carl Perkins just went on a different path and got out of music altogether as far as recording, and just became more of a writer, because a lot of people, if you don't know this, Carl Perkins was responsible for some of Elvis's biggest hits, like Blue Suede Shoes and Hound Dog.
He wrote all those?
Yes, he did.
Oh, wow.
And he was a brilliant guitar player.
Okay, I got a question. For you. How much did Sam Parker sell Elvis's contract to RCA for in 1955?
I want to say it was like $3,500 or something like that.
$35,000.
$35,000, yes.
Sorry. Okay. Continue where you were going. I'm sorry. That was the money that they make nowadays is just on the old stuff. To me, country music was that twangy Hank Williams, and I didn't like it. But then now country music is just, pop music.
Right. You have to look at it at this, back in the day, country music was that tear in my beer stuff.
Yeah. Yep.
And then Johnny Cash came along, and now they consider what Johnny Cash did as outlaw country.
Outlaw, right.
Okay. But back then it was actually considered rock and roll.
True. Very true.
So, it's funny how the terms have all changed, but the music never did.
True.
I find that very fascinating myself, because, when I was listening, back in the day growing up, when you were listening to rock and roll, you were listening to Kiss, you were listening to Motley Crue, or that was considered hard rock. And rock and roll was actually considered more like, I'd say, Hall & Oates.
True.
You know what I'm saying?
Well,
that's that style. But if you go farther back, you look at Johnny Cash, and he was considered as rock and roll, and now he's country.
True. Yeah. Very true. Yeah. There's always got to be a new thing. So I think that's why they always create heavy metal, or they create, disco, or, what is it? Grunge. I think they always have to have something new and fresh to keep new people coming in.
Yeah. Everybody's got it. It's basically, the way I look at it is everybody putting a new spin and putting their own take on an old thing. which is great because that means music is always, always evolving into its next phase. But if you look at it, even though it is evolving into its next phase, it always goes back to the old stuff.
True.
You know, that's where we get that 6 degrees and everything and our roots and yeah, all that stuff because you're drawing from the past to give it its future, but you want to put your own, like me and you have said many times, put our own stank on it. It just kept on, but it was 30 years later or 40 years later. I don't remember when so that was, no, it had been 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. Yeah. 40 years later, we had the traveling Wilburys, which at that time, Roy Orbison, Tom Petty, and George Harrison. And I can't remember the other guy.
And the guy from what's his name? He had the curly hair. ELO.
Yeah.
ELO.
Yeah, ELO, yeah.
Yeah.
So
no, it's great to go back and to see how the music back there affected everything. You know what I mean? It turned like the Beatles. When the Beatles came in, they changed everything. Everything just, from the appearance on the, what was that? Not Lawrence Welk.
Ed Sullivan Show.
Ed Sullivan
was their first appearance in 1964, I do believe, or 63.
Now, do you think that the $1 Million Quartet could have been if they had the audience like that, or do you think the Beatles changed it like grunge changed the heavy metal, in the 90s?
I think you're right on that in a little way. I think the Beatles were the next step in music evolution. You know what I'm saying? It went from, like I said, like you had mentioned, the Tear in My Beer Country to a little bit more rockabilly style.
Twangy.
Into that twangy rockabilly style, into that I Want to Hold Your Hand, the upbeat pop. And that's where the Beatles came in and, they took what they had from all these people and put their own stank on it. And then from that, we had people like in the wings, the younger Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley listening to the Beatles and saying, hey, we can do that, but we can do it better.
Right.
And giving us a sound that they thought that nobody had heard. And then Motley Crue coming along years later going, hey, we can do it better than them. And then Metallica saying, oh, yeah, you think you got it right? Now try ours.
The music for today, and you can't forget your history.
We'll never have another redheaded stranger once Willie's gone. We will never have a Man in Black. I mean, granted, we had a Man in Black on a racetrack, but we'll never have another one in music.
Yeah.
We'll never have an outlaw like Waylon again. I remember being that little kid, sitting there I do believe it was Friday night at 7:00, and you saw that white and black guitar with those two hands pop up on the screen. Singing about those good old boys.
Yep.
He had no idea who the man was, but it was Waylon Jennings.
Yeah.
And he was the storyteller, and that's what they were back then. That's what the Highwaymen were. They were the storytellers of their generation. And
well, do you think the Highwaymen, the song title suggests that they are heroes, survivors, or something else?
What I think everybody takes their own opinion from the song itself. In my opinion, when I listen to the song, I hear about a man that was telling his life, his story from start to finish about he kept going forward and moving forward into the next generation and learning about that generation until he found out that the entire time he was just looking for simplicity
Okay.
in his life. That's where the line where he'll just simply be a single drop of rain comes from. You know, that's what I took out of the song. Everybody else, it's like we say on this show, I'm not here to tell you what it's about. I'm here to make you think, what is it about? What is it about to you?
Right.
And that's what made that song so great. That it was one of those songs that it spoke to everybody, and everybody could get their own opinion from it. And nobody's opinion is wrong, but nobody's opinion is right either.
Well, as in every song, you get to interpret it as you like, you know, and I think that's the difference between radio and a music video, is because the music video tells you what to think. Look, there's a girl, there's three guys with the guitars, they're on fire, they're doing all this. The radio, your mind gets to go, oh wow, okay, your mind gets to just create the scenario of the song that you are hearing. And I think that is where radio just blows away a video. You know what I mean? Because you get to let your mind do all the thinking and all the creating to what that artist created. You get to create it in your own mind.
Yeah, there you go. Scott just taught me something today, everybody. I never really looked at videos that way, but it's right. The video is the band telling you, this is the story of this song, you know, so this is what we want you to know.
Yeah.
Where you're listening to the radio or some of the old albums and stuff, and you're laying back in the headphones and stuff, and you had to come up with your own picture in your own mind.
Correct.
And yeah, I think we're missing that. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love music videos, you know, but I think a lot of the music videos I like more are the performance videos, if that makes sense, you know, where they're not telling the story. But then again, I like some of them, because I'll never forget the first time I ever saw that 1938 Ford pull up and those three legs get out of that car.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, and then you see these scruffy looking bearded guys, and I'm like, wow, that was ZZ Top.
Right.
You know, they look like something that should be riding a horse, you know, not driving a hot rod.
Right. No.
And God forbid, Billy, if you're listening, I love you. Very he wasn't a hellraiser, because we all know he was. Because if he wasn't such a hellraiser, June Carter and him.
I was going to bring up June Carter. And
June Carter and him probably would have gotten together earlier, maybe. But maybe not, because then he wouldn't have been pursuing June Carter when he was married.
True.
You know? But he was a hellraiser. He didn't care about that. He used to listen to June Carter on the radio, and he fell in love with her as a little girl, her voice. When they were little kids, he had a crush on her, and he pursued her for many, many years. And it took Johnny Cash hitting the lowest part of his life for June to accept him and to make her see that that's the man she wanted to be with for the rest of her life.
Not at first.
No, not at first.
She was married.
Yeah, she was married too. And then she got her divorce, and Johnny went through a really, really hard time and was doing drugs and alcohol like it was going out of style.
Yeah.
And the story goes that June Carter, her mother and father, went to Johnny's house and literally got him sober. People would show up to bring Johnny drugs, and June Carter's father would chase him off with a shotgun. You know? And because of that, that's what brought Johnny into the fold again and brought him back to music. because there for a while he was failing. We would have never had the Man in Black, in my opinion, if it weren't for June Carter.
Really?
You know,
Yeah.
she
She got him
saved his life.
sober, correct?
Yes, she got him sober. She saved his life. You know, he would have been probably the first member. We wouldn't be thinking of Johnny as the man that came up with Outlaw Country. We would have been thinking of Johnny Cash as the first member of the 27 Club.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely.
but you know, and there's so many artists that